Hello, 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 everybody. This is Artemis, and welcome back to the SirLinksalot podcast. Today, we are joined by an absolutely iconic industry leader who has become an indispensable asset to her niche. And this isn't just my assessment. She was actually referred to as a marketing icon and a trailblazer by LinkedIn themselves. So, Nantale Muwonge is the founder of Black Girl PR. That's an award-winning digital PR firm that helps Black women and entrepreneurs and professionals gain visibility across the globe. Nantale was recognized twice by the American Business Awards as a Communications Professional of the Year, is a Stevie Award Social Changemaker of the Year, one of LinkedIn's inspirational Black women in marketing, and many, many, many more accolades that recognize her as an all-around powerhouse, making big moves in the PR space. Black Girl PR has helped over 5,000 Black-owned businesses around the world expand their reach to 14.9 billion people and increase their sales up to 60%. So we're super excited to pick Nantale's brain to know kind of how she made this happen and what's her take on various things in the PR space. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Nantale Muwonge.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure to have you on. So before we dive in, I actually want to know about your previous life. So before you were doing Black Girl PR and before you founded it, you studied psychology actually, and you also have a background in journalism. So I wanted to kind of know how these things helped you make that pivot into being such an impactful marketer. So I want to kind of dig into what that looked like for you and the progression of it from there.
How it happened was I got to a point in my career where I felt like the work that I was doing didn't reflect the impact that I wanted to have on the world. You know how it is when you graduate college and you have all these ideas about what you're going to do, and you're like, okay, this is my 5-year plan, this is my 10-year plan. In my mind, I had an idea of what needed to happen before I took the next step. But then I realized, when am I going to actually do the thing that I want to do? When am I just going to take that step, take the leap, right? And I thought about what my background was and what my skills were and what I liked doing. And I had, the background. My degree is actually my bachelor's in psychology, and I have a media and master's in communication psychology.
Okay.
I've worked in communications for the last probably 5 to 10 years. I had experience as a journalist, so started off working at newspapers.
Those were the days.
So I started off working in newspaper, moved into online media. I've worked at women's magazines, and then I pivoted from journalism to content marketing and digital marketing, right? And I was like, okay, the things that I really enjoy doing, I love writing, I love digital marketing, content marketing, and I've got experience with PR as well. So I can combine these and do something that's actually going to have a meaningful impact in my community. And that's actually how it happened. I sat down and I was like, okay, what do I actually want to do? I want to help my community in a productive way. How can I do that? What skills can I implement in a way that's going to help me accomplish this goal? And that's actually how it happened.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And I hear a lot of various interesting origin stories as to how people got into marketing in general, because it tends to have like a lower barrier to entry. But actually people who have a background in doing things like journalism tend to pop up the most because there are so many transferable skills. So, with the death of the newspaper, like, I don't know, I don't think I've seen a newspaper in like at least 5 years or something. It's just not. Maybe longer. I don't know. It's a natural pivot, I think, So the fact that it made you feel more fulfilled on the way to that, I think that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Especially at around 2020, I just started to feel completely disconnected from the work I was doing in comparison to what was happening around me, right? That was when there were a lot of, here in the States anyway, right? That was when we started to see some unrest around the way African Americans are treated, some protests, some human rights violations, basically, right? And I was like, I can't just get in my car every day, drive to a job, do a job that's completely disconnected from the way the world actually is, from my lived experience, sit in a building with people who don't recognize my lived experience. No shade, that's just what it is, right? We live separate lives.
Right.
Doing work for corporations that don't contribute to my lived experience at all, while helping them make billions of dollars, and then get back in my car, drive home, go to sleep, wake up, do the same thing again.
Right. So how did that look like when you were in the office? So it feels like in our communities. So for those of you who aren't aware, I am a Black woman. So we do definitely share that kind of experience. And I'm also from the States as well. So I also had a very similar experience where it felt like everything was kind of very urgent and very shaken up around us. And then I personally would go into work in like this agency job, and it feels like a completely different universe. It felt like the problems that were in that universe were like very different. Oh my gosh. So I want to kind of explore that with you. What was the contrast between the environment that you had found yourself in when you were plopped into corporate, like, and how did you kind of try to manage that day to day? Like, was there a specific time where you were just kind of like, I need to be doing something that aligns more with, my experience and my values?
There were definitely very specific moments, right? Like doing, having when you're in a meeting and everyone's kind of like talking about what they're doing for the weekend or what they're excited about, and my coworkers were talking about things like listening to what are those murder podcasts, right? But they were talking
Oh
about
yeah.
things like listening to murder podcasts, and they were basically talking about things that they were doing for entertainment. They were talking about how they access violence for thrills. That's how it came across to me, and I was just like,
Mm,
literally be sitting at home and the cops will break through my door and kill me, and nothing will happen because I'm a Black woman, and they will get
right.
off, and they're not going to lose a paycheck or anything. You know what I mean? So I was just like, it's so every time I step out, it's not even about stepping outside of my house. I can be in my home and be killed by the police because I'm Black. Every time I
Right.
get in a car and drive somewhere, it's a risk. You know what I mean? So if whether I'm on the move or in a supposedly safe space, it's risky. And so listening to them talk about how violence and aggression is something that they tap into for the thrill of it.
Yeah.
Whereas
Gotcha.
that kind of I have to put in the back of my mind in order to function as a human being. I was just
Right.
like, disconnect is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so you were really confronted with this disconnect between the idea of violence as just kind of something to casually consume and the violence that you were genuinely afraid of every single day. And you decided to remove yourself from that space and do something that more aligned with you. I want to know, what did the startup period kind of look like? So the initial like few projects that you took on, like was it kind of more of a front-loaded endeavor for you, or did you just hit the ground running with that?
I hit the ground running. And the thing
Nice.
with me is, I kind of got sick of everything, quit, and then just started a whole new thing. And it's worked out really well for me, but I don't recommend it. I recommend going in with a plan. But because for me, I just started everything from scratch and learned how to do everything outside of marketing and communications, right?
Right.
As I was doing it. So
Like businessy stuff, you mean?
yes, exactly.
Mm,
Finding clients and taking them through a process. Um, because before that, I was a subject matter expert that didn't have to deal with those things. I was just brought in to work on projects, right? Um,
right.
so for me, what it looked like was going out and having conversations with business owners, right? Going out, having conversations, listening to their needs, their concerns, doing consultations, a lot of free consultations to gain a deeper understanding of what their actual issues were and what they needed support with. And then I used that to create some services.
That's
And
awesome. Do you feel like I'm sorry, I just want to explore that a little bit more with the initial like consultations. Do you feel like that strategy would work for you today if you were to do it all over again? Just kind of doing the free consultations as like a way to get a good feel of the market?
yeah, 100%. Nothing
Okay.
beats sitting in front of people who need what you have to offer and asking them questions.
Gotcha. So what was the next step after that?
After that, it was actually engaging with small businesses who actually wanted to test out, who wanted to go on that journey with me, right? Who were
Right.
willing to invest in a solution to the problems they told me that they were having, right? And then doing that enough times with enough people to discover what I actually needed to do on my end to help them get from A to B in the most efficient way possible. And efficient in terms of their time and my time. Um, and then after that we accumulating results, right? Building up my portfolio and saying, okay, these are the things that I've been able to help people accomplish. And then as people started seeing that I was getting results, that the women that I was working with they were getting the features, but for me, it wasn't just about helping them get PR or do PR for them, right? It
Right.
was using the PR as a door to everything else that they needed, right? Whether it was website traffic to drive sales or authority, credibility, and so taking them on that journey. And then when people started seeing that I was working with people who are starting to get those kinds of results, right? The PR was helping them get grants, helping them get funding, helping them get wholesale orders, contracts, that type of thing. Then people started coming to me and asking me for support. And also by that time, I'd actually built out my own marketing system. So I was getting inbound traffic, because when I hit the ground running, I didn't have my funnel in place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I built something, and I built up my own presence as well. So I was just showing up in search. And when people were looking for the kinds of solutions that I had to offer, I'd pop up, if not right at the top, close enough to the top, or like on lists. So, and even today, still today, the majority of the traffic and calls that I get are from people who they've seen me. When they start searching, they just see Black Girl PR everywhere, and they're like, okay, I should probably reach out to her because she's clearly doing something.
Okay, so you were your first client. That's amazing. And clearly it works. There's definitely something to be said. And I'm not saying that every marketer has to have, a very strong personal brand. For example, I know that there's a lot of social media managers who only manage their clients' social media, or a lot of PR managers who only do PR for their own clients, and they get, more inbound leads through other ways. But I think that there's something to be said about you actually applying your own methods to yourself. Like, that's how you know, okay, this is something to explore. This is something that works. That's awesome. When you were doing your initial cursory audits of, figure out the needs of your actual target audience, did you notice any trends of people saying that they were, particularly in need or struggling with one particular part of getting media attention and they can't figure out how to make it?
No, not necessarily. I don't think I noticed any specific trends. I think there were a lot of one thing that I did notice was a lot of myths or misnomers. A lot of business owners that I encountered felt like their stories weren't interesting enough to share, to tell people, so they didn't feel like it was worth reaching out, because they felt like they would get shut down. And I think that probably comes from the way legacy media is set up here in the States, where the types of stories that tend to get pushed forward and bubble up aren't representative.
Right.
Or they aren't representative of everybody in the country. They're mostly promoting very specific ideas. So if you don't see yourself reflected in the information that's coming at you from these different screens, you're probably going to feel like your story isn't worth being up on that screen either.
Right. That makes complete sense. Is there a way that you kind of have to pep up your clients beforehand and say, no, this is an actual service that you could really benefit from regardless of this? Or do the people who mostly come to you at that point in their journey already kind of know that this is something that they want to at least try out, and they don't really take that much convincing?
I get both, and especially because I get a lot of introverts as well, who might not necessarily want to be in the spotlight in that way. So it's a combination of both, right? Some where they're like, I'm doing something really amazing and more people need to know about it, and then there's some where I think what I'm doing is interesting, and I wanted to check if you thought it was something that we could talk about more or put out there. So it's a combination of both. And for the latter, for the women who feel more hesitant about it, I'm 100% here for, regardless of whether or not we start working together anyway, I'm 100% here to let them know that their stories do matter, their voice is important, and what they have to say is something that people need to hear, regardless of whether or not we end up working together.
I love that. There's been a lot of women who you've gotten to work with, and I know that you guys probably heard me stumbling over this number in the intro because I don't think I've ever had to say it before. You've reached 14.9 billion people total, which is mind-blowing to think about, honestly. So I want to know, like, behind the numbers, what is a success story, or maybe more than one story, that you might have that stand out to you as one of the ones that really touched you and made you think, you know what, this is definitely why I got into this?
So, and I'll tell you, the reason that I got into this, the main reason that I got into this was because I was trying to figure out what's the best possible way that I can amplify my impact, right? So how can I come in and do the kind of work that's going to ripple out and positively affect as many people as possible? So there are definitely a couple of stories, but I think the one that is most representative of that is I had the privilege of working with an entrepreneur support organization called Buy From a Black Woman. And the work that they've done over the last decade is spectacular. They've supported over 700 businesses. post-pandemic, since 2021, they've helped the women in their network generate over $6 million. They do incredible work, right?
Wow.
They not only help support these organizations and these women, but they create pathways for them to access opportunities, access funding, get their brands in retail stores. And the work that I got to do with them, so because they're already doing incredibly impactful work, and they have a network where they're working with and supporting a large number of women, by coming in and helping them amplify their message, improve their visibility so that they can gain more access to more partners and that kind of thing. I helped them. I got to help them and the women that they're helping. So for me, that's my biggest. I don't know. That's something that I'm incredibly proud of. Like, I don't want to say biggest success story, but
That's amazing.
of impact, that's something that I'm really, really excited about, and that tickles me to this day. But I've gotten to work with some women that are doing really, really phenomenal things. Everything from women who are helping entrepreneurs and founders create legacy wealth systems for their families. So a really great organization I worked with, she helps organizations turn their businesses into inheritance, turn their businesses into an inheritance that their children and children's children can continue to benefit from, right? Inheritance vehicles, things like that, which is like that blows my mind, right?
Right. And that's crazy.
Right. So in terms of the economic impact of something like that, that's phenomenal, right?
Right, especially since it's like generationally something that the Black demographic has been struggling with. So it's really crazy how you've gone from literally just sitting in a corporate office and you thought, you know what, I just don't feel connected to this, to helping actually build generational wealth for the Black community. And I think that's fantastic. And I also want to say, you actually also put Buy from a Black Woman on my radar, because I hadn't seen it at all until you started talking about it on your own socials and sharing like the really cool like informational webinars that everybody was doing. And I was like, oh, this is actually a really awesome project. So I just want to say that I've also like seen visibly the impact of that project. And it's definitely worth a mention. You've actually supported businesses around the entire globe. So like all of them, you know, very impactful. But I want to know if there's any differences or any similarities between what you see in how Black women across the diaspora approach things like branding and storytelling. Like, do you tailor your approach based off of like the cultural market that you're dealing with, or do you kind of have like a standardized sort of approach that works for everybody?
Oh no, I definitely tailor it based on where they are, what they're dealing with, what they're working with. Because I can tell you, for example, one of my favorite clients, she's based in Zimbabwe. It's very different. In Southern Africa, it's very different. In Southern Africa, we don't have DEI and that kind of thing, right? Because it isn't necessary.
You know, it's more like ethnically homogenous.
Yeah,
I see.
Or when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there aren't, the obstacles and the systems are different. I mean, of course, Southern Africa is still dealing with, it's post-colonial, so they're still dealing with their own systematic structures of oppression. But for example, here working with a client in the States, whereas my goal might be to amplify the voice of a Black woman that doesn't have access to stages, right? That doesn't have access to stages that she should have access to. In Zimbabwe, like, our focus was more on just sharing the impact of the work. We didn't necessarily have to pitch her as a Black woman or as a woman, just as this is a psychologist who's doing phenomenal work in the community type thing, right? So it definitely depends on where they are, like what the cultural environment is like, and also what the media looks like and how the media operates.
That's really interesting. I remember when I was living in Turkey, I had a friend who was from Zimbabwe as well. And she would be posting Instagram stories of just like random things. She'd be at an art gallery. She would just be out at a cafe. And I was really shocked by how shocked I was at seeing people who looked like me all in like the same place. I never considered that it would be something that you wouldn't have to attach very deeply to your identity. Like you can just go and try to pitch PR if you're in Zimbabwe or in like another more like ethnically homogenous place and just say, this is a great psychologist, this is a great doctor, and they don't have to kind of attach that like qualifier to it. It didn't even occur to me that that was somebody's reality. So the fact that you mention it and you like tailor your strategy to it is really, really cool.
And that's actually one of the reasons that I highly recommend to one of the reasons that I highly recommend traveling to places like, I'm going to say, I'm always hesitant to mention Namibia because I don't want a whole bunch of people to go over there and then it becomes, gentrified.
You don't want to ruin it.
Yeah. But I always recommend visiting places like that because when you experience what it's like to just be, because like some places you can't go and you can't blend in, right? And people are just always going to be looking at you and coming for you because you're in the minority, right? But being able to go somewhere and you can blend in if you don't speak because they don't hear your accent, so they don't know where you're from, right? Even though the way you're dressed might be slightly different, there's something really powerful about that because the sense of belonging that comes from being in a space with people who look like you, so they aren't looking at you like you're an alien, that just does something. That does something to you.
Right. Do you feel like people can like, if you're hanging out with other like Black people in America and most people are Black American, do you think that they can pinpoint you as like someone who's from the African continent just by like how you dress or like how you carry yourself without you speaking?
The majority of the time, yes, but I think it's also because I think it's just because generally I'm pretty Afrocentric. I usually have like, this is quite muted. I'm usually wearing really, like colorful patterns and prints. I think it's just honestly, I think for me it's more the way I dress than anything else. And then as soon as I speak, it's that's a wrap. As soon as I speak.
Right, as soon as you open. Yeah, and that's so funny. I feel like I struggle with pinpointing people like that. Like people can, for some reason, they can tell that I'm American when I'm abroad. And I just finally asked this lady, how did you know that I'm not from here? Like what about it give me away? And she says, oh, you just wear like American clothes. You're wearing leggings, sneakers, like, and I'm like, you guys don't wear leggings? It didn't cross my mind. So there are those little cultural nuances, which is like my special interest of sorts, in all kinds of fields. So learning about them and how they apply to the work that you do is the most interesting thing ever to me. Do you find it more challenging to do PR for your niche in the States because of that?
Yes, but I think I'm going to say the main thing is just because here in the States, the bar is basically Black stories are very difficult to tell, and Black stories at all, the fact that that's a term or a phrase that I'm even using, but basically they've been relegated to the very bottom already. You know what I mean? Nobody's interested in sharing them, talking about them, telling the stories. And when I say nobody, I mean the broader community, right? Broader legacy media. So that's already a challenge that you have to recognize. So when you're pitching a story, you have to be very intentional about how you're telling it, what you're leading with, because you already know that the person that's on the receiving end is likely, like, you have to get past their bias. And then after you get past their bias, they have to take it to whoever is above them, whether you're pitching a reporter and they have to take it to the editor, or you're pitching an editor and they have to take it back to whoever they report to for metrics. You know what I mean? So there are all these levels of bias that you have to get through for them to see that this is a story worth telling, which makes it more complicated than if I was pitching a story in Namibia or Zim or South Africa.
That is disappointing, but I completely understand what you mean with that one. So I kind of want to touch a little bit more on the PR industry in general. So some of our viewers right now are tuning in because they're like newer to the marketing space in general, and they're just tuning in to learn more about, different facets of the industry. So I would love for you to break down for our viewers what role specifically SEO plays when it comes to things like digital PR.
I think the main thing, and why I highly recommend that, I think these days most PR people have some kind of experience when it comes to digital marketing. But if they don't, I always recommend taking a course. And there's so many courses you can take, and inexpensive ones. Am I allowed to mention?
Oh, yeah, you can name drop for sure.
Right. But you can easily do free courses. SEMrush, all of those agencies have free courses that you can do that are all really, really interesting, and you end up getting a certificate that you can add to your resume as well, right? But I think it's really important to understand how people find information. If you don't, that's basically what SEO helps you understand, right? Because if you don't understand how people find information, what the different ways are for people to discover information, if you don't understand that, then it's going to be really tricky for you to tell stories in a way that allow what you're saying to show up when people are looking.
Right.
And if you don't take that approach and you just push out stories that are, the story is news when it's happening and then it's just dead, then that's not necessarily going to be, that's not the most productive, beneficial way to share information in a way that's
Right.
create kind of lay breadcrumbs that people can follow to get back to you. So whether it's you're creating stories and you're seeding them with long tail keywords, or you're making sure that you have certain keywords that are coming up, or you're curating content on platforms that are maybe a high ranking, high domain. There's so many different aspects of it when it comes to SEO. But if you have a deep understanding of SEO and GEO now, right, then it's going to help the content that you're curating or creating. If you're taking a thought leadership approach, it's going to make your content. It's going to give it longer legs, and it's going to make it more. It's gonna give it longer legs, and it's gonna make it more productive in terms of your long-term goals.
Right. That longer shelf life is so important because in general, if you're working hard to like you're pitching these ideas and you're pitching these stories and then you work hard and you get it published and then it just like doesn't go anywhere. That would be the worst.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes you will have pieces like that, especially if maybe you're doing PR on events or specific things, specific dates. But the more evergreen your approach, the better.
Okay, gotcha. That makes complete sense. You mentioned that GEO is also something to be, kind of keeping in mind when it comes to their strategies as well. And of course, AI is shaking up how everything is done literally everywhere in every single just like marketing modality, whether it's digital or PR or anything. And obviously SEO. So I want to know, how are you adapting your strategy to that current messy-ish AI landscape? Do you actually use AI like in your own work, maybe with like crafting pitches or optimizing or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I use AI, or I use the LLMs quite a lot. Whether it's doing research to see what people are looking for, what they're searching for, the terms that they're using, or it's in different ways throughout my day just to shorten the time that it's taking me to accomplish tasks. One thing that I have noticed is that, especially with when it comes to geo and discoverability, is that if you have been doing a really good job, or if you had been doing a good job of incorporating long tail keywords and search phrases in the content that you're curating, you're probably seeing really positive results with your geo. You're probably getting a lot of traffic you're probably getting a lot of traffic from the LLMs, and you're probably seeing that your clients or your content is showing up a lot in people's searches.
Gotcha. So those basic fundamentals you've noticed have still kind of been applying when it comes to showing up in the LLMs as well, right?
100%.
Gotcha. And for our viewers, that also means backlinks. So those haven't changed to, when it comes to building your site's link juice, that's still going to be something that's also important as well. So AI isn't actually the only shakeup in the industry right now, or not even close. Right now, there's actually unprecedented changes right now in the PR space when it comes to newsrooms and editorial teams being more tightly controlled and sometimes even shut down entirely. How are you, as a owner of a digital PR company, navigating this when your niche is directly affected by it?
One thing that I've always been very intentional about is relationships. And I get that you don't necessarily have to have relationships to get media, but if you build relationships with people, then as the people leave and go to different places, your chances of still being able to have conversations about stories, or providing them with client people who can be sources for the stories they're telling, your chances improve, because you're building connections with the people versus the outlets, right?
Gotcha.
And I think at the same time as well, just being aware of what's happening in the environment and making sure that we're always keeping in mind that the people that we're dealing with, they're human beings. They're probably we already know, right, that they're stressed out, they're harassed, they're understaffed. They're typically very lean teams. They're quite busy. So the more you can help them and approach them in a supportive way, where your goal is to help them with their work and their content creation versus being demanding, the better it's going to be for you anyway. And if you are informed and aware of what's going on, whether it's with their organization or with their city, then it's going to help you approach them in a way that's more compassionate, right? So
Right, right.
them, because you understand what they're actually going through is going to be a lot different. And then I think the other thing is also not limiting yourself to traditional media and legacy media, right? Because a lot of journalists have also started, and this isn't new, because some journalists have always blogged and created their own kind of independent outlets and had their own newsletters. But now,
Right.
Now we're seeing a lot of journalists who have their own Substacks and they're creating their own content. So, and a lot who are podcasting more frequently now, right? So, you don't just have to pitch the typical traditional outlets. You can also reach out to journalists who have their own newsletters or who are doing other things, other forms of media.
Gotcha. So you don't really see the volatility in the newsrooms as more of a threat, just kind of an invitation to maybe shift to what you would call less traditional mediums of media, right?
100%. And I don't think it's a threat at all, especially because, certainly I think here in the States, I think the decentralization of media is an excellent thing. It's an opportunity. It means that there's less, how should I say, the way information is coming out, it's information is always framed regardless, right? So
Right.
it's framed regardless of where it comes from. But I think if we have more sources, I think it's easier to identify how skewed the framing is. So
I
yeah, so
see.
I don't think it's a bad thing. Certainly, I think it's challenging for the people who are working for these organizations who are losing their jobs. That's not a great situation to be in.
Right.
But I think from a consumer perspective, the more sources we have, the better. And I think
Right.
as PR people, if we consider the more independent or niche or micro outlets, then then I think ultimately it means that we have more options.
Okay, that makes complete sense. I'm just as a consumer of media, like most people are, I've also found myself gravitating more towards like smaller creators as well, like maybe even like a Twitch streamer or like a YouTube channel, or maybe even people who just post the news on TikTok. And I know that there are a little bit of like perils to consuming media in that way, just because, it's very sensationalized. Do you notice that there's a different way that you would pitch to the smaller kind of sources versus like the larger outlets, or do you just kind of open it up to, whoever is in your purview and just hit it that way?
So for me, regardless of who I'm pitching, it's tailored anyway.
Okay.
I'm always looking at who they are, what they typically write about, what kind of angles they cover, what kind of stories they like telling, what kind of people they may, approach. So I'm always looking at all of that so that when I'm approaching them, it's with something that fits what they're doing. Or if it doesn't fit what they're doing, I think it's something that I think they would consider. Right.
Right.
If I get a no, I mean, it's not the end of the world, right?
Right.
So I think if you're keeping that in mind, and also, of course, we have to make sure that you really are doing your due diligence, because you want to make sure that it isn't going to end up being someone who it's going to backfire for you to be connecting with them or connecting a client with them, right? So you want to make sure that, of course,
Right.
that they are checking their sources and they are reporting responsibly and all of those things. So you just want to
Yeah.
make sure that there's a certain standard. So, for example, if you're pitching a podcaster, then you want to listen to a couple of their episodes.
That could get kind of sticky.
Yeah, versus just reaching out because this is the name of their podcast. You actually want to make sure that it is in alignment and it actually does make sense for you and for your client.
Okay, gotcha. So your approach to both larger and smaller outlets being pitched is literally the exact same because it's always different.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. So I actually just want to leave with like a nugget of advice. Well, obviously, you leave us with a nugget of advice because you've already given us so much to chew on. But I remember you mentioned earlier that you also work with introverts, which is really fun to even consider, in my humble opinion. So you've said that visibility helps Black women claim their rightful place as industry leaders, which I think is fantastic. What advice would you give to these women who are hesitant to put themselves out there and aren't quite sure if they have a message that is worth being received?
I think instead of advice, I would ask a question, right? My question is, are you comfortable just being invisible forever?
Oh, I see. So very confronting, just kind of like, is this sustainable?
Because if you are,
Right.
then that's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? But if you feel as if the work that you're doing can help more people, if more people know about it, then why not take the leap? Try it out. What's the worst that could happen?
Actually, now I think about it, there's not that much horrible things that could happen. I mean, as someone who's also like, I have a pretty strong personal brand. I get very similar questions as well. People saying like, how do you do this? Like, how can I put myself out there like this? How can I cope with this sort of visibility? I find myself saying something very similar. Just kind of do it, because why not? And if someone, I don't know, says something rude, you'll be okay. I think that's probably the worst thing that could happen. So I think
I
that's
mean,
fantastic advice.
I had this. I remember my very first year at university. I had a physics professor, and he said, "The sun is going to come up tomorrow. The sun's still going to come up tomorrow, right? It's not going to be the end of the world."
Right. Oh, I love that. Oh my God. So pretty much it's kind of like it goes on, like
Yeah,
life goes on.
yeah. Sun's still going to come up tomorrow.
Gotcha. I'm going to steal that one. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I really, really appreciate your insights on PR in general. It's one of those modalities that's evaded me a bit. So getting to learn directly from the source and directly from the best has been awesome for me, and I know that our viewers feel the same way. If you guys want to check out what Nantale has going on, I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to check out Black Girl PR, or if you just want to check and see what she's been up to and what she's going to be up to in the near future. So this has been a new episode of the podcast, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks again, Nantale. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to give us a like, drop a comment, subscribe, so you don't miss out on any future SEO insights. And hey, if you're serious about your rankings, head over to SirLinksalot.co, check out our premium link building services, guides, and free SEO tools. See you next time.